1 second.
There's no second. We've already started.
I'm in a very small space here.
So, welcome back to the Northern Nerdcast. I'm Brad, and joining me is Clayton and Elliott from 2P Project. So, thanks for coming on. Every person that I talk to, we always say, we always talk about getting together, and then scheduling conflicts. So, that makes it sound like we're superstars, but it's just good to get you on finally. And so, welcome to the show.
Thank you, superstars in our own life.
Yeah.
My head's not going anymore.
No, it still is, but I mean, what can you do? You can't do anything about it. It just means you got a glowing brain. You got all sorts of stuff going on in there.
Always wear a hat.
So,
or you could be a quest.
Oh yeah.
Listen.
We're like this is a podcast I've actually been looking forward to, because to get all gamers on, this was originally going to be my board game one, which is kind of a reunion that I'm going to be doing with, well, Clayton's able to join, but a lot of my buddies from Ottawa, and just basically talk about everything that made why we got into being gamers and board gamers. But first thing I want to get off the bat right away, I don't know if you heard the news, but there is a lot of more controversy with CDPR and Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, I've been hearing that. Came
out today that apparently the developers knew that the game wouldn't even be ready for a 2022 launch.
Yeah, but you know what? Remember when we talked about that? When we originally talked about that last week, I think it was, or the last podcast I was on, we talked about The Witcher and the 1080 PR that they spun, how they took a vertical slice of the game, and it basically wasn't even the game. It turned out afterwards. Like, that seems to be fairly common practice for them. Yeah. So the fact that everybody's surprised that it wasn't even like a working model of the game, who cares? It's not like they actually came out. It's not like they owe that to somebody. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a build of the game. It should be representative visually of what the game, of how the game is going to be when it's done. Yeah. But if it's not an actual working code of the game, that's their business.
Well, that's just like when they released the Final Fantasy VII tech demo on PS3 years ago. Like, everyone was all super excited, and Square just wanted to show what the power was that they could do, which is actually the podcast is whether or not we're all not in agreement, but Squaresoft used to be this mecca. They're still a mecca, but they were an RPG factory. Like, they pumped out
powerhouse
games all the time, and lately it just seems like they're focusing on, for the RPG side anyways, is their big three, which is Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and maybe Star Ocean. I mean, they haven't really come out with anything since that disastrous game we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But
thank God.
What's that? Last Hope?
No,
Last Hope was awesome, man. Faith and Hopelessness.
Oh, the one after.
What was it? What was it called? Faith and something?
It was
Faith and Hopelessness.
It was Integrity and Faithlessness.
There it is.
Yeah, they just start throwing words around and adding suffixes to them, and like, hope and hopelessness.
There's literally, I don't even think there was any time travel. I think it was all in the same. But anyways, like they do have their bigger hits that are out now. Like Elliott and you and I were talking before, like Tomb Raider, Hitman, like that comes out. The third and final chapter comes out at the end of this month, I think. It seems like they're getting away from, and I mean, you do what's right and do what the money dictates, but
and the thing about Hitman too, though, right? Like, the thing about Hitman, is that it is releasing, and they're coming out with a new one. But some of the things I've read already, that in order to play Hitman 3 and some of the Hitman 2 stuff, or some of the levels, you'll have to technically rebuy all the levels from Hitman 2, which is silly. Like, really? I mean, if you already if you already own Hitman 2, I mean, you should just be able to transfer that stuff into Hitman 3, right? But I mean,
a lot of people
games have a service model.
When they came out with the last one, though, the one that was episodic, that they were releasing in chunks.
That's number 2.
Yeah, that was number 2.
Yeah, a lot of people were like angry about that when that first happened, because they're like, just let me buy the whole game. I don't care. Like, I'll wait for the Game of the Year edition or whatever to come out, and then I'll just buy the whole thing.
Yeah,
Like,
so I played that too. I
Yeah.
played that for a little while, and the thing about it is that, I mean, once you clear a level, I mean, you can go back and try some other stuff, but there's people out in the world who've already beat the game, right? Who've
Yeah.
already beat the game. They've put their guides online. So all you have to do is go online, find the guide. You don't have to play the game yourself, and you can just cruise right through it with it and get absolutely everything. Which, to me, I mean, okay, there's a lot of people out there that talks about cheating and walkthrough guides and everything like that, right? But when you look at it, you don't have to look at those guides, but they're there, right? And it's almost like an attraction. It's like, so why am I even playing Hitman 2 if this has already been discovered?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I didn't really like Hitman 2, and that's exactly what you were saying, is that I was pretty angry too that I had to keep purchasing new episodes every time they came out, and it was all the same. People would beat them faster than they could come out. And
well, we won't talk about Clayton's his favorite game, Asura's Wrath, then. So
You know what though? That's not Square, but the criticism that I have with that is that they locked the last 3 chapters of the game behind a paywall, even if you bought the physical copy.
That is a
joke.
And
then years later, they still never released a complete version of it, and you still have to go online and pay full price to get the last 3 chapters. So I just went onto YouTube and just watched the last 3 chapters, because
you might as well at that point, right?
Fuck you, Capcom. That's BS, man. That is some serious BS.
And you spend a lot of time playing it, right? It's like, oh my god.
And it was a real shame. Like, it was a real shame too, because it was such a good game. Like, it was actually, when I first started it, I thought it was basically like Japanese God of War. Super angry god going against other gods, and all these different types of mini games and stuff. And I was like, okay, whatever. But by the time I got about halfway through it, I was like, man, this is right cool. Like, this, I would love to watch like a show about this or something. But then I got to the end and I was like, are you serious? Like, really? You guys did that? That was a huge slap in the face. It wasn't even good enough to buy the physical media. They still made you buy the DLC at the end.
Well, that's just the thing. That's what all microtransactions, developers, they're all doing it now, right? Anyway, so I mean, we should just either we accept it or what, right?
Microtransactions.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So getting back to the whole thing about Square, like a lot of their big selling series. Well, I mean, obviously they weren't that big selling if they stopped, but like you're going back to even Chrono Trigger and the original Final Fantasy. But like even lesser, I wouldn't say lesser known, but you've got the Drakengard series that just seems to have faded away.
Drakengard though has new life in Nier. In the Nier, because Nier actually spawned from one of the many endings of Drakengard 2.
See, I didn't know that. Yeah,
that's where that comes from. It's pretty cool actually how they work that in.
Okay. Well, I mean, you even going back to, mind you, this game got a spiritual successor per se, but because of the fallout at the time between Sony and Square and Nintendo, we never saw a sequel to Super Mario RPG. I mean, you saw Gino in the very first Mario and Luigi game when he was they were using him to explain how to fight, and that was it. And then at the very end of the game, after you beat it, it said that thanks to Square.
Are you there?
What's that?
You had a momentary blip there. Your face went,
okay. Well,
you went fugue state.
Like Gino they had to use special permission for him in Mario and Luigi on the Game Boy Advance, that RPG. But like even a massive series like Chrono Trigger, like I don't know if there was plans for them to do a third one, but it just fizzled out.
Supposed to be.
Completely. Like they were supposed to do, I think it was called Chrono Break on the 64, and thank God it didn't. But like it stopped, and I mean you can argue this, and like I see kind of like Final Fantasy 13 2 as being a spin-off an unsequel sequel to that because of the time traveling aspect. Like you were going through different areas, but we've never seen a full sequel to that. I mean, and it could be argued that like moving forward, like what spawned up from Xenogears, you had the whole Xeno series, but Square only did the very first game, and then it was picked up by Monolith Soft, who were ex-employees of Square, and then and then Xenoblade came out and all them, but it's just their games just seemed like they just after a while, you know what, whatever, we're gonna move on to the next series, and we're not gonna revisit these ones.
Well, I remember. Sorry, 1 second. I remember the whole Super Mario RPG thing. I just watched a video not that long ago, actually, on like the entire history of that series, and the Paper Mario series that picks up with the 64 afterwards was actually basically Nintendo after the fallout with Square taking their ball and going home. So I can't remember what the company is that they hired to do it, but the Paper Mario games are all spiritual successors of the Mario RPG on Super Nintendo.
Yeah, and I think they were supposed to be full-fledged partnership games as well at one point. But speaking of Super Mario RPG, Gino actually in that game, he's going to be showing up in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Well, not him, but him is going over into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and it's making everybody in the gaming community, like in the Smash community, just go, "Come on, just give me the character," so that so they can have that, right? Because they already have the tie-overs with Final Fantasy VII with Sephiroth showing up. So I think Nintendo's coming around again. I know at one point back then when they were trying to, sort out all that post Super Mario RPG, I know that Nintendo just was like pieced out. It was like, we're not going to do this. It was like a breakdown at the executive level or something like that. I read through some articles on that a while ago, and it was just the way it went down is kind of well, it's history now.
Yeah,
but it's a good thing that they're coming back, or trying to anyway.
Yeah, but they when they came out, they broke away from Nintendo there, and then when the PlayStation came out, they had like a library of stuff, and then after Final Fantasy VII hit, everybody was like, "Oh my God, Squaresoft, the new the new RPG darlings." But then you looked at the library, and there was a ton of stuff they had released. Like they had a whole bunch of stuff out. I've got tons of stuff here, like stuff that, well, this wasn't out at the same time, but Story. You ever play it? Utterly amazing, like totally amazing. And then what else? I have a whole bunch of other stuff here too, but they started off really, really awesome. And then, they just started doing retreads of everything. And they they stubbornly refused to redo Final Fantasy VII for the longest time until people were like, finally just, okay, whatever, don't do it, then we don't care. And then they're like, oh, okay, we're going to do it now. Like, I wish, Brad, once you get the ability to throw clips into the show here, you got to put in the clip where they announced it at E3. It was utterly insane. Like the crowd response was just crazy. Even I was sitting at home watching it, and I was like,
was it as big as when
it was the biggest announcement at E3
on stage?
Oh, bigger. It was huge, man. The response was massive. Instant. That's all I have to say about that.
So what I'm wondering then, we're talking a lot about SquareSoft. But are we referring to like our SquareEnix in general, or are we referring to before the merger?
The company.
Because was Final Fantasy IX even, was that just SquareSoft or was that SquareEnix? I think it started with 10, didn't it?
No, that was SquareSoft.
Yeah. So I mean, like, we can talk about Square as a whole, because we're like, I still remember when they acquired Enix, and because that was like, that's when Star Ocean was massive. Like, I mean, it's always been a popular series, well, until the last one. But when I remember hearing when they announced the acquisition, and I was like, wow, this is going to be really good. And like, a lot of the games they came out with were good, but there were some like really bad ones. Like me personally, I really liked Dirge of Cerberus, but
yes, man, that's Clayton, awesome.
He's
hell of a
never
game.
Played it. Clayton's never played it, so he can't nothing to compare, like agree or disagree. But I
For
loved
its time, it was a good game. Okay, I recently went back to it, and it's really janky. Like I can't. It's really hard to play. But if
Yeah,
you're a fan of like games on the PS2 and you like that kind of thing, the Dirge of Cerberus is an awesome game and has an awesome story. And for the most part, it's canon too, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of extra stuff in it that they've put in that really sets it apart from the other games. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't. Brad's like giving me an unfair criticism here.
Oh,
I didn't play it. I went back and I actually tried to watch like a long play YouTube video of it, and it looked interesting. Like I imagined that the controls would be janky, but it did look like an interesting game.
Like they're bad. Like it's brutal.
It looked much darker than Final 7 too.
You move left on your controller and you end up going down.
Yeah.
Oh yay.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to play it on an emulator, man. It's much better to, at least if you're gonna play it on a PlayStation 2, because the emulator you can't
Feel rage.
It's an exercise in frustration.
Yeah, and I mean, like I shared this with Clayton a couple days ago, but it sounds like we're getting a remake of Crisis Core. Square registered 2 names that were synonymous with Crisis Core. What did I say? What I had never heard of this. What was it? Beginning Materia or something like that. But anyways, it's see that's like the all the video that I can do. I can't do anything else. Like I can't
see. I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying to do like a sidebar thing here.
But like there's talk about that getting a remake. There's actually talk about the compilation of Final Fantasy VII going on the Switch. So like I guess that would just be a port of Crisis Core and maybe an enhanced graphics of Dirge of Cerberus.
I'll take it. It.
Oh yeah.
So,
well,
sure.
I mean,
and I think it's all conjecture anyway right now at this moment. I mean, I think everybody's just trying to guess at whether it's going to be a remake or not. So there's a couple of theories out there. One, it's based on this whole Final Fantasy VII universe and the compilation stuff, right? So it goes, you have Advent Children, you have Before Crisis, you have Crisis Core, you have Dirge of Cerberus, then you have Ever Crisis, which is one of the words that they trademarked, right? Ever Crisis. And the reason why people are thinking it's an expansion or its own standalone game is because it's following the conventions of the AC, BC, DC, right? CC, DC, EC, right? And that's what people are thinking right now. But at the same time, you look, I don't know, I don't want to talk about spoilers, but at the same time, it's like, is it really a remake, or is it going to be something like they did with Final Fantasy VII Part 1 remake? And is it going to be something along that lines where we're operating in an alternate universe, maybe?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I honestly can't see it being a remake, but because I mean they don't have a lot of time to do this unless they've been working on it for a long time and have been keeping it really under wraps, which would be insane. My head would explode.
Yeah. I don't see them having the resources to do a full out remake.
No, exactly.
But I do see them working kind of alongside with the Final Fantasy VII remake team to make sure that these re-releases of what are they like Crisis Core, whatever it is that they're doing in the Final Fantasy VII universe actually falls into canon with like more strictly with everything that's there. So they might they'll reskin it for 1080p, right? Or even 4K, whatever they decide to do it at. It'll be the original game, but they'll edit out certain portions that don't really make sense. Maybe add a few things, you know what I mean? But they won't mess with the assets too much. And then they'll just package it as like, what do they call that? Like an expanded universe, right?
Yeah.
It's not like Star Wars where they have the Disney has a name for all of the expanded universe there, the Legacy, Star Wars Legacy Collection or whatever it is. They'll want it to fall in line because if they don't, they're going to release it and then they're going to like release it at a time when they're trying to build up hype for the next Final Fantasy VII. They're going to want the story to fall in line. So
exactly.
They might take the opportunity to do some tweaks, but I don't see it being a full remake because they just do not have the resources for it.
And the same thing happened with Final Fantasy 15, right? Like when that released, that was supposed to be a full universe. They called it the Final Fantasy 15 universe.
Yeah.
And they released, they had all these DLCs lined up. You had the movie, you had you had the game, the base game itself, and then it was just supposed to be a complete closed in world. But then obviously either they ran out of funding or something happened at the end, which
I know.
really messed things up. But it went over to books, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the other thing that could happen here, right? I mean, they also have the First Soldier trademarked as well, which is really awesome because who is the first soldier like Sephiroth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was the first soldier. So and part 2 guaranteed is going to include a lot of Sephiroth. So why wouldn't they take some of that, some of those assets and some of that, story and put it in another game and do something with it, right?
Yeah.
You know which character I kind of wish that
see
they
what
would have
happens.
continued in with the series, and it was he's a tragic hero, but Genesis. Like it just at the very if you unlocked everything in Dirge of Cerberus and you beat the game and then you got a special ending where so Sephiroth has one wing. Is he the left or the right wing? But Genesis is the other wing.
He's the other wing, yeah.
And so he picks up
he's the right.
So he picks up the last boss and he says, "We're not done yet." And then he walks off into the sunset, and then that's it. And then so Dirge of Cerberus came out before Crisis Core, so everyone was like, "Oh, who?" Because he only went by the name G. Oh, see, he's got the toys. See, that's stuff I always wanted, but so Genesis is like I guess the main villain in, well, you played Crisis Core, but he's like, so you have Sephiroth, who's like, I guess the secondary antagonist, but it's mostly about Genesis. And but yeah, so you don't know who this guy is until you played Crisis Core, but it just they get, and this ties back into like the rest of the SquareEnix Squaresoft library is a lot of their games just ended. Like you have him walk off and it's like, oh, but I want more. And then like even the same thing, like I should, the other big three, the actual big third game in the Square library, not necessarily Star Ocean, but Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't played Kingdom Hearts 3, so let's.
And I'm not gonna like. I had to stop. Like it was good, but it
was nowhere near as good as the first one.
No, it was.
Sorry.
And
sorry, man.
No, it's play it by all means because you have to finish the series.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden they come out with this fucking dance game.
Yeah.
Pardon my language, and that was a $79 game, and it's just this rhythm game.
Yeah.
Well, there is a Final Fantasy. In their defense, there's also a Final Fantasy rhythm game as well.
But that wasn't full price. It was like $39.
Yeah. You're talking about Theater Rhythm?
Yeah.
I'm talking about Theater Rhythm, and he's talking about Memories of Melody.
Yeah. But like all these RPG companies, like even Atlas came out with Dancing All Night, Persona 4 on the Vita. But I mean, that's a totally different company. But
well, you know what sucks about this too, right? Like, is the thing that sucks about this is that they've actually put canon in that stupid Kingdom Hearts game, and you literally have to play it to understand another portion of the Kingdom Hearts universe.
Oh man, yeah,
but kind of dumb.
Which that universe spiraled so far out of control so fast. Like, so here's the thing. The first Kingdom Hearts is a really good balance of Final Fantasy characters and Disney characters. It was awesome. Yep. It was awesome to take the Final Fantasy characters and go through the Disney worlds. And then you play the second one, and what the fuck? The Council of 13 and all of these black-clad people. And, like the coolest thing about the first one was the fact that it happened all basically in the Disney style. And then at the end, if you collected all 101 Dalmatians, you got the secret ending. And the secret ending was that ultra realistic, cool CG movie of somebody looking for Sora fighting the Heartless on that rainy street. And it was like, man, that looks so cool. I would like to see another piece of that story in the next game. You know what I mean? And then they just threw it at you. And all of a sudden there's all these councils, all these extra enemies, this, that, the other thing. You had to play all the games, read the books. You had to the this and that. And it just got so far out of control for me. By the time I got to Dream Drop Distance, I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like
that happened to me too. I just recently played what is this? Has been upgraded. Oh, okay. That happened to me too. I played Kingdom Hearts 1 for the life of me. I couldn't figure out why Final Fantasy characters were in the first game. There's no reason for it to happen, but that's just me. I could dig into that a little.
I think they were worried that Disney wasn't going to sell an RPG.
I think, and honestly, I think it was just there for fan service as well, right? Like, I mean, you don't know why. They don't have a purpose to be in that game. And it makes sense why they're not in Kingdom Hearts 3. But anyway, the point is that I went Kingdom Hearts, then I went into Chain of Memories, and then I went into Kingdom Hearts 2, and I was still messed up. Like, I had no idea what Castle Oblivion was. I had no idea, unless you actually play through it and sit down and get inside Nomura's head, it's almost impossible to understand how those games fit together. I had to go offline and read through like a number of articles and fan theories about the game itself just to understand a portion of what they're trying to accomplish. And I still have to tackle the rest of the games. But before I go into the next game, I'm going to have to read some stuff because I can't remember what happened in number 2.
There's so much like obscure, there's so much symbolism in it. And there's so much like obscure lore, stuff like that. You can't just play the 3 games in the main series on PlayStation and know what's going on. You basically it's like constant suspense of disbelief. And you just go from encounter to encounter to encounter. And then the credits roll at the end. I liked having the Disney characters, and I liked, for better or for worse, I liked having these Final Fantasy characters in the game. I just found that in the first one, the worlds, they didn't think about the sequel. They picked all the best worlds for the first game. And then in the second one, they picked more of like the kitsch niche ones, like where you got to go into like Steamboat Willie and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And that was right cool. And even the Hercules, the Colosseum, all that kind of stuff. It was all cool. But the whole thing about all of these councilmen and all of these like crazy haired, black clad people killing each other and, like trying to fight each other for this reason or that reason. It just got so convoluted that I just couldn't be bothered to follow it. But at the same time, I found that right around the time that they were making the first Kingdom Hearts, all of Square's games started to do that. They started to get like convoluted for no reason more than to just be convoluted. They started to say, oh, the story is so deep because look at how twisty and turny it is. It's like what's his name from Hideo Kojima, one of his stories where everybody's in bed with everybody else. And it's just when you think you know what's going on, surprise, something weird happens. And I get the same feeling with that, only it doesn't hang together as well. I don't know. It's not, that's where I really feel like Squaresoft lost me.
Well, and that's the thing with their older games too. Like the lesser known series like Radiata Stories, like it was more of a recruiting game. It was like Square Enix's version of the Suikoden series. Like you had to recruit 101 characters to get the best ending, and then when that didn't work, okay, well, we're going to scrap this series and we'll move on to, actually, I think after Radiata Stories, they started doing Kingdom Hearts and just like intertwining all of their games and then like even Final Fantasy 10 and what more so for 10 too, but I don't want to go and learn a new language. Like I have a hard enough time learning a new language in real time. Like I don't want to have to learn Albed or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
That was actually so that to enhance replayability, right?
Yeah.
Because they fully expected you to play it through once to understand the story, but then they wanted you to play it again so that you could actually understand the story, which is kind of dumb.
Well, the problem with that though is that they gave you the sphere grid. They let you hit limit breaks, which would actually let you break past 9,999 for points in anything. Like for the first time in the series, but they made the combat system so unbelievably boring and repetitive. Yeah. As soon as you saw a certain, like every type of enemy that you fought had a corresponding one of your party members. You had them all the time, and it was as easy as just switching to the party members you needed and then having that same fight over and over and over again. And then they made a sequel to it, which I mean is great.
Okay, hold on. I love that. I love that game.
Why did we never get a sequel to this? Japan got Tobal 2. We never got it. It was amazing. This deserved a sequel.
The whole Japan exclusivity thing could be an entire discussion on its own. Honestly, we are so frustrated. I don't know if you see all the stuff we got back here, but I mean that is it's Japan only, right? Like there's none of this stuff comes. Well, little stuff comes.
Yeah.
Here. My wife, she's like, well, not really. There's like a bunch of stuff. She could have her own conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah, but they.
Go ahead.
Well, the thing is that people people who love SquareSoft stuff are they are clamoring for more stuff and more diversity in the games, and it seems like the company decides what Western audiences will like before, even in the age of digital distribution, they decide what we like before we get the chance to tell them. Like we have Airgees, which most people don't know about. And we have Bushido Blade, which they did make a sequel for, which is friggin' awesome. It is one of the most inventive fighting games I've ever played. It's like this game takes, this is a PlayStation 1 game, and it takes into account things like stance. You can, if you cut somebody in the arm, their arm is useless. You can mess somebody up, and it's all about stances. You can win a fight in 1 or 2 moves. And on top of that, the fighting stages are actually all interconnected. It is possible to run right to the end of the game at the very first fight.
So I think I just read recently that they're coming up, either not like a full-blown remake or something like that, but they're definitely making, not Square Enix, but a company or a developer or someone is coming up with a Bushido Blade homage or pay homage to the game. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember, but I can't remember the name of the company that did it. So I mean, this conversation isn't going anywhere, but the point is, Bushido Blade 1 and 2, yes, I agree 100%. They were awesome. And I remember playing with my brother, and we play until God knows who knows what time in the morning, like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning on a school night. Like, I just chopped your head off. No, man, I just chopped your head off. It was an insane game, and I would love to see something like that come to PlayStation 5, or even just a PC or something, right? Like, or even Switch would be awesome for something like that.
Switch is the not the powerhouse, but the powerhouse in that sense that, like, it seems like all of the forgotten games go like onto that system. Like Nintendo, like just they're the port king. Like everything's either a port or a remake. But that was my previous the previous episode was, because the Wii U sold so poorly and they had such a small library of games, a lot of people overlooked them. So then they brought them on the Switch, and now they're selling like crazy. But I mean, I would love to see I played I Am Setsuna, and so that and Lost Sphere are kind of a
Tokyo Game Factory
homage, spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger. There are moves that they carried over from Chrono Trigger, like the X slash and all that stuff.
Oh, cool.
But I would love to see a sequel to I Am Setsuna. I know, obviously, you never played. I'm not going to spoil it, but you can't really get a sequel to that game because the whole point
of what happens.
The whole point of the game, without spoiling anything, is you take Setsuna to an altar to sacrifice her. And you have to, but it's like,
I'm not going to spoil it, but I'll tell you what happens anyway.
No, I mean, that's it says it right on the back. It says, you are Setsuna, you are a sacrifice. And like your main character, his job is to protect you.
Well, you know what? That actually reminds me of Final Fantasy X. Right, it's the same thing that happens with Yuna. I mean, Titus and Yuna, right? Like, you're taking Yuna to get sacrificed by sin or whatever, to get rid of sin.
Yeah.
So and they're tied too, right? Like, they're not tied as in game stories or anything, but they're obviously by the same or close to the same company, right? So.
But it's just I would like to see a lot of like these series make some kind of return, like you were talking
Yeah.
about Steel Blade, like it would, yeah, exactly. And it wasn't,
Let's do it.
Wasn't what was it on the DS? Lenneth? Is that what it was called?
Okay,
Yeah.
so but that one is actually
Number
this
one.
one for original PS.
Yeah, a remake.
And that was it was an incredible game. Like it really was, because it was so different. That's what I mean. Like Square's games are so samey now. They're so they've taken all the really interesting stuff that they were doing. Like I don't know if you played the last Front Mission too. They turned it into a first person shooter. That was a tactical RPG, and it was really, really friggin' good. And it's too bad because they're taking all of their really good, diverse ideas, and they're like amalgamating them all into this one meld of Final Fantasy type stuff. Like honestly, like 16 is coming. They announced it. I'm sure we all watched the teaser trailer for it. I'm
on the fence.
Scared, and I'm scared, and the reason I'm scared is because I feel like it's going to turn into a hack and slash game with numbers, and it's going to be the same nonsense that we've been getting for like the last, I don't know, half dozen games from them. You know, they're trying to appeal to Western audiences. Like I'll be honest, the combat system for Final Fantasy VII Remake, their offering for the classic battle mode was a joke because it put the game on easy. You know what I mean? And I wasn't a huge fan of the turn-based / action / gauge build / numbers / bonus / this, that. They get, you know, like in a way it was too complicated, and yet at the same time it was too simple. Like it was too simple to be an actual tactical RPG, and it was too complicated to be a hack and slasher.
I think they were testing the waters.
Yeah, and the other thing too is they brought on Devil May Cry director / writer or producer, whatever he is, right, for Final Fantasy 16. So of course it's going to be that way. In addition, they have Yoshi P doing the producing as well, right? So I mean, he's the guy that's masterminding Final Fantasy 14, and he's the guy that brought all of the, you know, all the good things about every MMORPG in existence, put them all into a game and repackaged it as a Realm Reborn. So obviously he's going to take that same thinking, right, to Final Fantasy 16 and go, okay, what do people like? Right? Well, people like Bloodborne and super difficulty. People like things like hack and slash. They want to have fast action right now. So they're going to bring people in who are, you know, comfortable with this stuff, and then we're going to get something that is still Final Fantasy inspired, right, or Final Fantasy at the heart, at the core, but then it's going to have all these extra little pieces in the game as well. I think Final Fantasy 16 is going to be fantastic.
I hope so. I really hope so, because I've been playing them since the Super Nintendo days, this one being my absolute all-time favorite.
Oh yes, man.
And
needs a remake. That does.
I would you know what I would like to see? I'd like to see that done in the style of Octopath Traveler with the slash. Can you imagine?
That would be awesome.
Kafka and the Light of Judgment and everything there in that pseudo 3D style.
And then they actually throw in like a couple wars, like from Suikoden. That would be awesome.
Another series that I was hoping would make a comeback.
What is that? Oh, Grandia, my friend. Yes, the heart.
It kind of
Grandia 1 for the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Grandia 1.
Yeah, there it is.
and
this is all just flex. It's all just flex.
It started off as a Ubisoft game, and then Square.
Well, if you have them, why not, right?
So.
It started off as a Ubisoft game, you said?
Well, I don't know about Grandia 1, but Grandia 2 is produced by Ubisoft.
Game Arts.
And Game Arts for the Dreamcast, and then on the PS2.
Yeah, the port.
Oh, that one's terrible though. That version is terrible.
Anything that came out for the Sega Dreamcast is best, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that in that one, I'm just going to have a little sidebar here, because that is one of my favorite Dreamcast games. The thing is that all of the magic spells in that game on Dreamcast were pre-rendered CG effects laid over top of polygonal backgrounds. when they redid it for the PlayStation, they redid them all in real time polygons. So the thing is that the magic spells on the Dreamcast one, and go and watch it on YouTube, still look amazing. They have this really, really good looking, like ethereal quality to them, where they sort of look like they're superimposed on the screen, but at the same time, they have this incredibly awesome, like grainy pseudo 3D look. Whereas the ones in the PlayStation actually look super cheap by comparison. The music is all compressed and weird too. It's just not as good. I'll be honest. Like I played them both, and it's just not as good.
Yeah, and the only reason I got it was well, I had number one. Actually, I think did you.
You sold me number one.
Yeah,
that's yours. That was yours.
Yeah. But I mean, I got it to complete the series, and number 3 was probably the worst of the entire bunch, just because. Like for an RPG powerhouse like Square, it was I beat it in 18 hours, which is
that was weird. It was weird. Like I remember that one was 2 discs, eh? I remember getting to like the end of the first disc, and the main character's mother and her boyfriend fly away in an airplane, and then you like never see them again. Yeah. Isn't that what happens?
Yeah.
It's like really weird, man. It's like they took a whole bunch of care in the first disc, and then all of a sudden it just kind of poof. The story just disappeared.
Well, they got to move on at some point, right?
Well, they got to move on.
Good luck saving the world.
The latest Star
Oh,
Wars.
yeah, faith and hopelessness.
Like this is like I was talking about terrible games and Dreamcast games being the best. Like, arguably, Shenmue is probably one of Dreamcast's best games. Now I read somewhere, and this is fair game because it's Square, but didn't at one point Square have a hand in doing something with number 3? Because I thought I saw something about that a long time ago.
On Shenmue?
Shenmue 3, when they did the Kickstarter, I thought I saw something that Square was involved somehow. But
I am honestly not sure. I'm just trying to see if you.
Terrible game.
I'm trying to see if your theory that Shenmue is actually the best Dreamcast game, because what I've got up here, I've got a whack a Dreamcast up here.
So
I know
Shenmue
there's
3 is actually sold on the SquareEnix store.
Yeah.
So you must be
really?
right. Yeah, you must be right in some respect.
It's really weird because it's WiseNet, Deep Silver, Sega, Unreal, and Cryware. There is no mention of Square on this at all.
No, but I think
better
one
on
of those,
the GameCube.
Yeah.
No way. No. Well, no, that's not true. Legends is better because it's got all the DLC and everything added into it.
But yeah, it's sold on the Square page, which is like maybe Square was like silent backer of the game or something. But I had a feeling, but like it was for me, the only reason I got it was because I love number 1. And then I got, we're getting a bit off topic, but I ended up getting that as well, and that's garbage. That's hot garbage. That's not even garbage.
Hot garbage.
So let me just read something.
Yeah.
I just did a quick a forum search on this. This guy here. This is obviously just someone on a forum, but it might give some idea to someone who might want to do some more deep research on this. Deep Silver is an Austrian-German publisher of the Austrian-German distribution Koch Media. Koch only handles distribution in Europe, so that's why other companies like Sega, Capcom, Koei Tecmo, or Square Enix have a distribution deals with them. Koch Media manages stuff for them in Europe, and in return, distribution deals with companies for other territories like North America. So therefore, Square Enix games are distributed by Koch Media. So I'm assuming that Deep Silver also has publishing partners as well that is related to this.
Yeah. Well, because Deep Silver had, and
I'm
we just talked about this.
Yeah, we
Deep
did.
Silver.
Because we that was when we were talking about what was it? Games that shouldn't. It was 2 podcasts ago, but Deep Silver had a hand with Dead Island, and I'm pretty sure it was either Dead Island or Dying Light that Square Enix had a hand in as well.
I'm pretty sure I want to say Dying Light, yeah.
Dying Light was actually a fun game.
There was something Deep Silver that we actually liked, and I can't remember what it was, but yeah.
Anyway, they collaborate. I'm sure Square Enix collaborates on on a ton of
yeah.
stuff that we don't realize, right? Like they
might just like they don't develop or publish a lot of
Right.
everything that they actually distribute. They may just be distributors.
Yeah. Or even just have a hand in, oh yeah, okay, here, we'll just do this change here. You can borrow our studio, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. But what's I'm drawing a blank on what I was gonna say.
Lost. Lost for 1,000 years.
Like even Nair, like I don't know if Replicant's an actual new game or if it's like an
No, it's not. It's a remake.
Of which one?
It's
I'm
a remake.
Getting so tired of remakes. Let me tell you.
Well, okay. So the thing about Replicant is that we got Near Gestalt here in North America. In Japan, they got Near Replicant, which is basically like the mirrored flip side to the Gestalt story. So that what they're doing is we never got Replicant here, so they're re-releasing it here. So for Japan, it's a remake, but for here, it's basically a new game. It tells the other side of the story, I guess, or like kind of like how Final Fantasy, what there was supposed to be 15 started out as versus 13.
Yeah,
it's the same idea, you know. I don't know exactly.
Well, it's all supposed to be the same universe.
Yeah. I'm actually pretty stoked for that. Like I want to play that. I loved Nier and I loved Automata. It was awesome, man. Fuck yeah. Just everything about that game was just mind-blowingly good.
I didn't like the tech demo they released though at what was that last event that we watched? The Game Awards. The tech demo they released for Replicant, I just thought it was kind of boring.
Yeah.
Like it didn't really show anything.
The thing about both of the Nier games though has been the fact that the gameplay has been excellent and the story is always awesome. The graphics always suck though. Like I'll be the first one to admit
I'm not a big fan of graphics.
Automata's graphics were not like they were not awesome. They were not like top tier graphics. They were like second best, especially with regards to things like prioritizing certain assets. Certain other assets get like the PS2 treatment. You know what I mean? You'd like when you get up close to a lot of stuff, it would look like absolute ass.
Well, it happened in Final Fantasy Remake as well.
I knew someone was going to bring it up.
Yeah. There was a good couple of places there. I remember where you're looking at stuff from far away, and then you get there, and it's like, oh, this looks like shit. The character models were amazing, and then there was a couple of places. What was it?
When you're going up the like after the.
Oh God! The fucking when you're going up the tower after they fucking drop the plate there.
Yeah.
Holy Christ!
And you're looking down. It looks cool, but you can totally see that it's garbage.
Well, it looks good when you're like running around, but as soon as you stop and you look down at the rubble, it looks like a low pixel version of like the PS2 pre-rendered graphics superimposed on the like. I should say subimposed on the background, but it looks super flat and 2D. And it's just, I stood there and looked at it and I was like, how in the fuck did this get past quality? Like, this looks awful.
Sacrifices, right? Just to get the game out through the door.
But they didn't release a broken game. We're looking at
Hey, you just brought the conversation full circle back to CDPR. Look at that. Yeah. What was that question you asked us in the beginning of the show?
I don't know. I have a feeling that every conversation is going to circle back to CDPR for quite a while.
Oh my God, CDPR! Yeah. I don't know. I love the game. I love Cyberpunk.
I haven't given up hope.
I'm
waiting for the patch to come out. Ever since the hot fix, I can't. It keeps crashing on me. So I just
my biggest thing is sound. My biggest thing is sound. Like for the most part, I haven't run into a lot of the graphical or game breaking bugs yet, but I find that the sound is like really rough. Like sound effects, I can hear where a sound effect starts and where it ends. You know what I mean? Like a visual cut or a sonic cut and paste of the sound effect. Like, I don't know if you've ever played like an old NES game on a current TV. Like if you go to play something like Mario on a current TV and you really listen, you can hear where when you pick up a coin, you can hear this sound that starts. It's like a block of sound. The sound before you actually pick up the coin, there's like and then the biddling, and then it stops. There's like a block of sound there, yeah, and you can actually hear it. And I get that with a lot of the CDPR stuff, especially the gunfire. The music gets like when you go into the club there. What's her name's
Afterlife.
No, not Afterlife. The other one there. Lizzie's
Like
Pizzy,
the mocks,
whatever.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. The music gets like super loud when I step out onto the dance floor, and then I like walk backwards into the hall, and it gets staticky and super quiet. Like you can like, and I mean, like you can't hear it. It's really strange. But I've only had a couple of visual bugs. I had one where a guy had a cell phone stuck to the side of his head, and I know that's not like a future tech thing because he was talking on the phone, and then when he brought his hand down to talk to me, his phone was still in his hand yet
That's funny.
inside his ear at the same time.
I had my car. The only graphical thing I encountered in Cyberpunk was my car just floated off into the sky.
Well, that's normal.
Where's my car going?
that's the future, man. Get ready for the future. Uber just actually flies a car to you. I'll be honest though. Like I remember, like, and Brad and I talked about this too. I remember when, not to get too far off the subject, but I remember when Skyrim came out and you walk out onto the field there the first time. I remember watching a mammoth fly off into the air, and it would happen before they patched it. It would happen every time I went out there. I'd get out there and I'd be watching them, and I'd just see them. They'd come back down and they'd go up, and they'd come down and go up, and yeah. And
the best thing for me in Skyrim was the
backwards flying dragons. Yeah. You know, it was awesome too. For some reason, like even years later, when I played the game, after like the Game of the Year edition or whatever, when they had everything patched up, if you used your fire spell, a two-handed fire spell on a dragon carcass, it was like the dragon was dead. The physics were no longer applied to the dragon. You'd hit it with a fire spell and the fucking thing would just it would just send itself across the landscape.
That's awesome. I would have paid to play during the buggy era of Skyrim. I actually didn't get into Skyrim until well into its lifespan.
Oh, it was a mess at the beginning, man. It wasn't fun.
So you pick and choose whichever one you want to play it on.
Yeah. Yeah, your phone, your PS2, your toaster, whatever.
Alexa app.
Yeah, Alexa. Yeah, but anyways, back to Squaresoft. They actually had they had a really good run where from the PS1 to the PS2 era, they were like really branching out, and a lot of their biggest franchises had some of their best installations, like Dragon Quest. Amazing.
That's actually one of the only series on any PlayStation or anything that I have never played.
Play that one, man. Journey of the Cursed King. Play it, man. It is utterly amazing. I'm telling you, the music will blow your mind. It is awesome.
And I'm a big fan of music, so
it's hard. It's a hard game. It's a hard, long, old school RPG. It will make you grind, but it is
as long as it's nothing like Lufia. Okay.
I don't remember. I remember Lufia and the Rise of the Sinistrals, but I don't actually remember the game itself. But this is like a hardcore. Did you play Blue Dragon for the Xbox 360?
I have.
It's the same idea. It is an old school, dyed in the wool, turn-based.
Terrible. Those games are terrible.
It was amazing.
So I don't like a challenge when I'm playing an RPG. It's like, give me okay. I don't mind a challenge. I say, give me something that I can do, but don't force me to grind. That's my thing.
Oh, okay. You don't want to play Dragon Quest.
No, it's a grinding game.
It is a grinder, yeah.
But even Last Hope, Star Ocean, that was a grinding game.
Yeah. Because the friggin' thing there, like, I can't remember what planet was you got to. You got to the planet with the red and black enemies where they were like different dimensional beings or whatever, and they were just hard AF. Like those guys just took a shit kicking, and they were just damage sponges.
Well, grinding's okay too, though. You know, like grinding's okay as long as the battle, the fighting's fun.
The battle system in Star Ocean was good. The battle system in Dragon Quest is good too, but it's very old school. It's very NES old school.
Yeah.
Oh, like you put the guys here and the guys are in front of you.
Yeah. It's all old school turn based. But the thing is that
Dragon Quest games, with the exception of 11, I think 11 went more of a 3D aspect. Well, not I think I played it through and through, and that's another topic we talked about. Like this game, it came out as the base game on PS4 and the Switch, or on PS4, and then it came out with like the complete edition, and then they came out with Dragon Quest 11R, which is the Switch version.
Yeah.
It's just
But
like
the point
game,
is though is that they went from the PlayStation 1 into the PlayStation 2 era, and it seemed like they had a lot of stuff going for them, and then all of a sudden they started to walk stuff back.
Once they got into like the hard, not hard in the sense like hard game, but once they started like where the graphic capabilities became much better.
Yeah.
Like, yes, the games took longer to make,
Yeah.
but like for me, I've never lost faith in Square, but after like Final Fantasy 13 really put me off the series for the longest time because it was so linear. Like, and I mean the Final Fantasy 7 remake is linear, but you knew what you were getting because Midgar,
I'll be honest.
Midgar, like it's they expanded on that part, but like you see this amazing series like Final Fantasy, and then it comes out 13, and there's no cities. You can only buy weapons at these booths.
Yeah.
And you were literally going like one line here, and like I didn't finish it. I got so mad that Square came out with this crappy game that everybody seems to have loved.
Oh, okay. Let me tell you about my experience with Final Fantasy 13. I bought it. I was super stoked for it. I bought it. I was super stoked for it. I was like, all right, here we go. New Final Fantasy. Been waiting for this because they were coming off of 12, and 12 was a grind fest. It was like that was the one that was like the Gambit system and the MMO kind of stuff balanced in there. And before that, we had 11, which was a strict MMO. And before that, we had 10, which was on the PS2. So when it came to the PS3, I was ready for a Final Fantasy game. So I put this piece of shit in my PlayStation. I put like 2 hours on it, and I was like, what in the fuck is this?
I only made it as far as Odin. So
okay, so this gets better. So I stopped playing the game, and it boils in my brain for like a year. And so I one day I picked it up and I was like, God damn it, I got to finish this thing before the next one comes out. So I put it back in. I play for a couple more hours. No, can't do it. Finally, like 6 months later, I put it back in. I'm like, all right, we're doing this. So I started playing the game, and I played it, and I played it, and I played it, and I maxed my characters out. And I did all the side quests, and I hated every minute of it. I hated the characters. I hated the story, but I did it. And then I got to the very end where you had to fight Orphan. And I don't know, you guys never got this far, but the last boss has a regularly occurring one-hit kill that wipes your entire party.
Oh my God.
And there is nothing, I don't think there's barely anything that can save you from it. It is such a cheap move, and it is such a shitty last boss. But I beat that fucking thing, and I took that game out of that case, and I fucking put it back. I put it back in the case. I put it on the shelf, and I never looked at it again. And then people are like, when I would get into like, I talk to people online about it or whatever, they'd be like, well, you just never played it. No, motherfucker. I played it. Believe me, I spent every like brutal minute with that thing. And I think the biggest thing for me that it came down to was I wasn't a big fan of the battle system or even like the UI for the battle system. I hated the characters. I could not get into them. Lightning was just not likable. Saz was okay. Snow was a preaching piece of garbage. Sarah was barely in the game, and Vanille, her accent, I could wake up in a nightmare in a cold sweat just strangling her, thinking about the way that she ran with her hands like this, and her voice was just I still can't talk about it. I'm still emotionally distraught about that character. Like, I hate her so much.
And you know,
so, yeah, I hate the game.
The thing about that too is there's a lot of people that have the same feelings that you do about Final Fantasy 13. But what really gets me is that when people say Final Fantasy 7, even though it's the same game, like Final Fantasy 7 remake, and then they compare it to Final Fantasy 13, and then they say Final Fantasy 7 remake is not linear. And it's like, but Final Fantasy 13 is linear, and that's why I don't like it. And it's like, Dude, are you not looking at the game? Like, I mean, at least Final Fantasy 13 opens up in chapter 13 or something like that for a little bit. But Final Fantasy 7 Remake doesn't open up at all. The quests, the side quests are pointless. There's no chocobo running around. Like you can fast port through whatever, but you can't really ride a chocobo. And you know, those are the pieces that of a Final Fantasy game that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
You will never
take them out.
You won't hear me say that I love Final Fantasy VII Remake. For me, honestly, it was a nostalgia trip.
Yeah,
and
I think for a lot of people it was.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to come back through Midgar. I wanted to see all of those assets redone in high detail. I wanted to see the new stuff they did with it. But make no mistake, I didn't feel like I was breaking new ground. I was along for the ride. And in the next game, if they don't adhere to a loose approximation of the original story, they're going to lose me. Because I'm not interested in all the new crap that they come out with, because for the last, 10, 12 years, they have consistently failed to impress me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like the new stuff. I liked the original Final Fantasy VII story, concessions.
And it's still there, right? Like, it's still there. You can always go back.
And I do.
Fight games. Like it's a new IP, and I hope they pick up the series more. But Octopath Traveler, like that reminded me of playing Final Fantasy 3, 6, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And like Glenn will argue that Final Fantasy 9 is the best game. Me,
he'll be right.
I think 6. See, and that's what it is.
Okay, so 6 is the best 2D top down. Yeah. Okay, because they were at their absolute zenith there for 2D graphics. Like they had it mastered. They had, when it came to 3D graphics though on the PS1, 9 is definitely the best of the three.
Absolutely. And like they just came out with 9 on Play.
I got something to bring in. Oh my goodness, look at that.
One of my favorite characters from the entire Final Fantasy is Vivi.
I liked Vivi too. I liked Zidane too, and Steiner. I liked a lot of the characters in that game. It was a good story.
He reminded me of Buzz Lightyear. That's how I saw him.
Yeah, it was a good story though. It was a good story, and it was a nice throwback to the older type of Final Fantasies with the castles and what
really draws me to 16 is they're going back to that sword and magic. But
I know, and that's why I'm like cautiously optimistic about it. But at the same time, if the battle system sucks, it's just going to be like, oh fuck, here we go, 80 hours of like mediocrity.
Well, that's what I didn't like about 15 was it was like this open world, but I didn't like the battle system. I didn't like if I'm going to equip a weapon, I want to equip it like and use it for a bit. I don't want to have to switch between a great axe, massing sword, like a gun. Like it's just I didn't like that. And for you trying, like you went back and completed Final Fantasy 13. I tried getting into 15 so many times, and every time I played it, I was like, no. Done. No.
Oh, you know what I did though for that one? I did. I constantly ground all of the side quests and everything. And the thing is that I was so powerful by the time I went back to the main story that I'm actually kind of glad I did, because I got to see the story at a regular pace, and there was not a lot of actual main story in that game. It's like you start playing and you get to that first town up in the hills there, and then boom, Luna Freya's dead. Oh, okay. I thought she was going to be like a central character. And then you play 13, which is like chapter 13. I know that they went back and retconned it and made it better. That game is like a case of like what you were saying before about these different programmers coming on and bringing all of their collective knowledge to the table, throwing it into the game, and then seeing what you come up with. There were so many different mechanics in that game, the fishing game, the hunting quests, the customization of the car, all of that stuff. There was a ton of awesome gameplay in that game, but the story itself was just not there. And especially there was this huge disconnect because I bought the 2-disc version that came with the Blu-ray of Kingsglaive, which I liked. Like I liked Kingsglaive as an introduction to the Final Fantasy 15 world. But then when you actually play the game, all the voice actors are different. And these characters that they built up in Kingsglaive are nowhere to be found in the game. And the main character that you see in the game, Luna Freya, is like she's nowhere to be found for the first part of the game until you get to the Water City. At which
you can
point
talk
she
to her
dies
through her dog.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like you get to her and you're like, okay, familiar ground. Here we go. And she's dead. You know what I mean? Like the pacing was really weird.
The death served a purpose, though. I mean, it had to. She had to die. There was no.
Yeah, I know. I just mean that they took this great care to construct all of this lore and this world in Kingsglaive, and then they just sort of abandoned all of that for the open world formula of the actual game, which was a real shame.
Well, and you know what it is, though. I mean, people are like, Final Fantasy should be an open world. They think about Final Fantasy 6. They think about Final Fantasy 9. They think about Final Fantasy 7, 8. All these games from the PlayStation era and the Super Nintendo. They think because they're all technically they're open, but they're still linear, right? But people have this thing that the games have always been open, but they've never really been open world. They're just a world map. Right.
Yeah.
And
you
so
could see the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And Final Fantasy 15 now really had an open world. Like you could do a lot of stuff, but then people are complaining that there was nothing to do in Final Fantasy 15. The people that are complaining that there was nothing to do was the same people that didn't take the time to go out and find those endgame dungeons or to customize their truck or to, like stuff. People just want to complain.
That's the thing for me, like Final Fantasy is an event. When a new Final Fantasy game is released, it's an event. I will always buy them. So like Brad said, I platinumed 15. I platinumed the vanilla version of 15, right? I did all the hunts up to the Adamantis. I did all the fishing. I got the Regalia type D, whatever, where it flies. And I have no complaints about the actual gameplay or the world or anything they came up with. I was just disappointed that the story was so lean. Like you just went from town to town to town, and then basically you did like one thing in a few towns, and then it was like, okay, it's off to the end of the game.
That's true.
Whereas like a game like Skyrim or Oblivion or any of the Western RPGs, like the story, even The Witcher 3, the main story is meaty. Like it is super meaty. And then the side quests, as abundant and as well fleshed out as they are, still don't compare to the depth and breadth of the main campaign.
So is that a developer problem then? Is that what, because a lot of people don't have a lot of time to play game. I mean, for me, for instance, I have like 2 to 3 hours maybe a day to play.
Yeah.
Not even sometimes, right? Like, because now with school going, you lose track of a lot of time, or you lose a lot of time. Family demands a lot of time, right? And I like that. I'm not discounting that at all.
Damn kids want to play my video game.
Yeah. But developers, I feel, are creating games nowadays with that in mind, right? They can't give a meaty story because people are just not going to have the time to play their game. I mean, if you look at the PlayStation 4 stats or the PSN stats and on all the trophies, the percentages are really low in terms of how many people actually beat a game nowadays.
Yeah, that is true. But in the case of Final Fantasy 15, I think it has a lot more to do with the fact that the story was the game itself was repurposed from the Final Fantasy versus 13
and rushed.
And like oddly, even though the game took 10 years to come to its final form, it still seemed like the story was an afterthought and that it was rushed and that we didn't really get the story that we should have gotten for the amount of time they took to build the world.
So it was off and on too. There's a whole backstory to that.
That's another conversation.
So with that being said, because I know everyone's got to go about their ways, let's just end it with what you would score Square as a company, taking in mind everything that they've done since the beginning of their company till now. I'll start. I'd go 7.5. Like there's been more misses now than there have been maybe.
Yeah.
I think there's room for them. Obviously, they're a maybe $1 billion company. I don't really know what they're worth, but I'm going with a 7.5.
Yeah. I'll go with a 7 because I feel like that's a company that makes most of its money off of its glory days from the PS1, PS2 and Super Nintendo era. And while I'm glad that like they took the time in the last, I don't know, I'd say 10 years to buy up studios like IO Interactive to make Hitman and Eidos Interactive to make Tomb Raider, and they're branching out to keep the money coming in. I feel like they know that their actual glory days are in the past, and that's why we're going to get games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and then now Near Replicant because it's an easy way for them to shore up the coffers while they work on games like Final Fantasy 16. But I feel like they have a lot of hope for it, but maybe the higher ups don't have a lot of faith in it. They're probably playing a conservative game, and it feels like we're not getting the best of what they have to offer.
Oh no, I completely agree. I'm a little more on the positive side of things. I kind of like the way the direction of the series is going. I'm not a big fan of turn-based games. I never have been. That being said, the golden era of Final Fantasy honestly was from Final Fantasy 6 to Final Fantasy 9 for me.
Yeah.
So if we were to ask this question back then, I would say Square Enix was definitely in a 9 to 10 range.
Yeah.
However, now I see them more. Okay, hold on. Moving forward, they're going to be back for me personally around a 9, but I think because just the way they're putting the stories together, Final Fantasy 15 was rushed. Who knows what's going to happen in Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy 7 remake. It was also pushed a little quickly. Developers want to push games. I'm seeing Square Enix right now again at about average, probably about a 7.5 as well. I mean, I don't know what would knock them over that 0.5. Like, I mean, I could say they're an 8 now as well because I like the action combat. I can't honestly see me going back to a turn-based
I don't know
world, but they have done some good turn-based games. Like, I mean, Persona, or no, that's Atlas. World of Final Fantasy. Just like World of Final Fantasy for me was amazing. I loved it.
But still, that's another game that relies on past characters.
Yeah.
On past glory. The same as Dissidia and Duodecim for the PSP, the 2-player fighting one there, Final Fantasy, and then NT or whatever it was, NT.
Yeah,
the one Brad knows what I'm talking about. NT for the PlayStation 4, but they're.
I have that right here.
Yeah, I don't care for the combat in the new stuff because like 15 was like press square to win. Okay, hold it down. You didn't even have to press it. You just hold it for the whole fight there until you got to like the Menace dungeons, and then it was like, okay, you're dead. But everything else was basically just hold square to win. So I don't know.
Well, that's what some people argue, but there's a lot more strategy to it.
I know there is. But you're talking to a guy who spent like 150 hours on it and like level 99 to all of my guys and everything. Like, I know what the combat's all about.
So I'll put in the description as well, but just before signing off with anything, where can people find you, Elliott? Like, just this is your time to promote yourself.
So. That's a good question. You can find me on Twitch. Yeah, Twitch is a 2P Project. You can find me over on Twitter at 2P Project. You can find me on YouTube at 2P Project. Super easy. Pop it in Google. 2P Project.
Nice.
Again, I appreciate you coming on, and Clayton, I guess.
I guess. Yeah, you're okay too. Yeah.
But
it's been fun, guys.
We'll wrap it up here, and I'd like to at some point get you guys back on, maybe with World Peace. We'll get him as well. But
all right. I want to talk to that guy.
this Square subject is not something that will ever go away, and I'd like to revisit that at some point. But just again, thanks for coming on, and we'll be in touch off the podcast as well.
No problem. Where are you posting this? Just on Anchor, or does it go on your Facebook?
I posted on Instagram. Like, I'll post the link, even though Instagram doesn't really.
Am I following you on Instagram? I don't know.
What's that?
Am I following you on Instagram? I'll reach out to you on Messenger.
I post on YouTube, and then the audio, like there's an audio only clip which I like. I just post that on to Anchor. I can send all the links as well.
No problem. I'll promote the shit out of this, so don't worry about
it. No, that's great. And Clayton had a YouTube channel. I don't know if he really uses it anymore, but it's been hot dog flavored water.
I've been busy for like, I don't know, 2 years.
That's the life, right? That is it. You can't.
But anyways, I appreciate you guys for coming on, and it was fun, and we'll definitely have to do this again.
For sure,
thanks, Brad.
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care.